everyone. I am not expensive. So I'm a cheap date. If you take me out for drinks, like a beer will do it. I'm just saying. So I'm really excited to be here. It's been many years that I've been hoping to come to YoastCon, and then I was finally going to come, and then COVID hit. So it's great to be here. It's great to be in the Netherlands and with the amazing Yoast team, who are always so lovely. So thanks for having me. So today has been pretty much focused on SEO, but a lot of the SEO work that is done, and particularly the Yoast plugin, is based on WordPress. So I'm going to switch it up a bit, and we're going to talk about WordPress, where it is today, where it's going, and potential challenges and opportunities that face us as a community. So first, a little bit about me, although you did a very good job of introducing me. So I've been in the industry for 15 years, and I am the, sorry, I can't see this. I was organizing WordCamps in Israel. I did that 5 times, and I've spoken at many WordCamps around the world. The first WordCamp Europe was in Leiden, and I came to speak at that, and that was like a game changer for me. It was really exciting. I founded a WordPress agency, and then from my experience there, I came up with the concept for Static, which then I went on to found, and I was the CEO of it for a number of years until it was acquired by Elementor, which many of you are probably familiar with, last year in June. So I'm coming up on a year at Elementor. For the first 6 months at Elementor, I continued leading the Static business unit there, and then in January, I took on a new position as head of WordPress relations. So that's what I do today. So where are we at? Happy birthday, WordPress. We're at 20 years of WordPress, which is crazy. It's an open source platform that started in a very grassroots way, and it just really solved a need and kept growing. It's one of the few platforms that is like that not only continued growing, it's always gone up. It hasn't had dips or anything like that. It's just consistently been growing because it was solving needs for many people. Let's just look at where it was and where it's at now. So if any of you have been around that long, you might remember the old WordPress admins, and what they looked like, and then what it looks like today. It's come a long way from that perspective and functionality and everything like that. Also in terms of growth, obviously, continuing to grow all the time. You can see there's a little bit of plateau now, but consistently over the years, WordPress has just kept gaining more and more market share. So it feels like the future of WordPress is bright, right? Something that continues to grow, continues to have a strong community around it, and a strong user base. So it is bright, but there is also risks. When something reaches 20 years, you have to stop and think, okay, where are we at? How are we doing things? And what should we be thinking about for the future? But first, because you've been sitting here for so many hours, and because you also had lunch, and I had lunch, I'm going to tell you a joke. So, why did the WordPress site need therapy? Why? Thank you. Because it had too many issues and couldn't resolve its conflicts. Oh, that's the total dad joke. By the way, generated by ChatGPT. If you need good jokes, just ask ChatGPT to make jokes for you. It's unbelievable. It has a sense of humor. It's a little bit crazy. So, okay. So now that I've told you a joke and you laughed and hopefully woke up a tiny bit, or you went, oh, what a terrible joke. Okay. So we're going to look at 5 points that are related to WordPress's future in terms of opportunities and challenges. One is developer satisfaction. So it is really, really key for any platform, piece of software, to keep developers happy. Developers are critical to the success of any platform, and also, of course, to WordPress. Why? Well, first of all, WordPress is built around this concept of extensibility, and that is related to the plugin ecosystem and the theme ecosystem. And who is developing the plugins, and who are building the themes? It's developers. This is what brings a lot of value to the WordPress industry from the beginning. One of the most exciting things about using WordPress was that in one click, you could add a plugin and have a new functionality that you didn't have to code to get, or you could have a new design that someone else created and you just installed it in one click. And that's being created by developers. But also because they're providing technical support and contributing to the WordPress community. And they help keep WordPress secure and up to date. There's a lot of professionals who are around security aspects of WordPress, which are really, really important. And they bring new ideas and innovation to WordPress, right, which is important from a technology perspective. But this is the most important thing. They're key technology decision makers. In any organization, someone is making a decision about what technology is going to be used to achieve an organization's goals. And most of the time, that's someone who's technologically oriented. So you want them to be excited about your technology And in our case, we want people to continue to decide to use WordPress to meet their business's needs. Is that happening? Not exactly. So to developers, many developers, not necessarily if there's developers in the room, hopefully we still are excited about WordPress. But overall, there's less excitement about using a PHP-based, LAMP-based stack and technology software. So they're not always choosing WordPress in the way that we would like them to, and that means organizations aren't using it. So there's a survey done every year by Stack Overflow among developers. In 2020, it was 65,000 developers. In 2022, it was 85,000 developers that answered this survey. So I'm showing you the one from 2020, and I'll explain why. So in 2020, these developers were surveyed, and there's a section called Most Loved and Most Dreaded Stuff, Technology Platforms, etc. So WordPress won as most dreaded, and also won as least loved. And that was in 2020. So that is already like it's like a projection of what's going to be in the years going forward. Now, why am I showing you the survey from 2020? Because after that, WordPress stopped even being an option in this developer survey. So people weren't even giving feedback about it. Yeah, not good news for us. So this is a very big weakness for WordPress, in my opinion, and this is something that we need to work on. If you know Chris Coye, he wrote CSS Tricks. He's still kind of involved, but it was acquired. An amazing blog, and he has always been a fan of WordPress, and he'll say that. And he follows Matt Mullenweg, and he watches the State of the Word, and he's really into it. And he said this in one of his more recent blog posts. Part of me thinks WordPress needs to spend a year working on DX, developer experience, because the developer experience around WordPress is not the best. Developers who are really excited to work with WordPress and want to make it work, they'll find workarounds that work with their workflows, but overall, it's not super developer-friendly in many ways. But there is silver lining, like there always is. So there are some interesting kind of developer-oriented projects that are taking place and are always taking place in WordPress. And so hopefully these kinds of things can help keep developers steering towards WordPress. So one of them is, of course, the WordPress REST API. So the REST API makes WordPress headless support headless implementations. The reason that this is good for WordPress is that it means that developers can use a front end that they prefer. So the theme, which is the front end of WordPress sites, tends to be built on PHP. And in the case of a headless implementation, it can be built with React or whatever, the framework of choice for the front end for the developers. That can be good for the developers and also for organizations, because often a large organization will have teams of front-end developers already in place, and they often, unfortunately, tend to not be PHP experts. They'll be experts in another framework or language, and this way they can use it and still use WordPress. Another project is SQLite. That's relatively new, and Ari from Yoast is leading that, which is cool. So that's an interesting project that makes kind of a more lightweight database for WordPress sites. And the WordPress Playground, which is also a cool project, which allows you to run instances of WordPress just like in your browser. So these are like in their infancy, but it's cool to see innovation happening in the WordPress space, which shows still enthusiasm on the part of developers in our industry, and hopefully this enthusiasm can carry forward and kind of be contagious to developers outside of our industry. Also, we're seeing more innovative platforms in our space in terms of managing, sustaining, hosting, deploying WordPress sites. So WP Engine has their own kind of approach to headless WordPress called Atlas, which is interesting. And they seem to be investing a lot in that and promoting it and getting some enthusiastic reactions to that. WPCS is Dutch, so some of you might know them. They're new and kind of small, but they're a multi-tenancy approach to WordPress, which is very interesting and very different. And a lot of their selling point is build SaaS on WordPress, which you can say, well, you should never make WordPress do what it really shouldn't do. But it's an interesting approach, and they have a use case, and people want to use it. So that's also an innovation around it. And I'm going to just mention this company, Stratic, which I'm kind of connected to. But Stratic is also a very different approach to deploying WordPress. The way that it works is that you kind of hide the WordPress site from the internet, but you can use it as usual. Click a button and deploy it in a fully static architecture. And it's also headless because it's decoupled from the backend. So it's basically super scalable, very fast, and security vulnerabilities become like irrelevant. They're not there because they're in the if they do exist, they're in the WordPress site, which is not accessible to the internet. So those are just some examples of innovations around WordPress. There's more. WP CLI is always being used for more and more things, and there's other interesting developments. So it's good to see innovation. Hopefully we can see more, and hopefully it can continue to grow the perception that WordPress is an innovative platform. Carol ran a hackathon at CloudFest, which is a conference which happened in March. Yes, March. And I was really excited to be there because it was basically all about innovation around WordPress. It was all these teams developing really cool products in like a minute. I mean, not a minute, but like a few days, and then presenting them. And it was enthusiastic developers who came together at a hackathon to create innovation around WordPress. Super cool. Very exciting. It would be great to see more of those things, but at least we'll probably see it once a year. No pressure. Because that looked like a crazy thing to have to organize. But it was fun to show up and see it. So that kind of thing shows that there's still innovation. So basically, bottom line is developers are really important. I feel like they need more attention. We need to see more innovation in order to ensure the future of WordPress from that perspective. Okay, but then on the opposite end of the spectrum, WordPress needs to be no code for real. So one of the big promises of WordPress when it came out, and when many of us started to use it, was that as opposed to other options out there, with WordPress, you don't need to know how to code. You install WordPress pretty easily. There was the easy 5-step installation, which wasn't actually so easy, but eventually hosting platforms just gave you like one-click installation. Easy installation, connect your domain pretty easily, install plugins, install themes, you're up and running. Really cool. From early on, I discovered the Yoast plugin, installed that. My sites were very SEO friendly and consistently so because Yoast made sure that the plugin was always like a minute up to date with whatever Google was doing. Google said this, the plugin did that to support it. It was amazing. So that was really exciting, and it really was, in many ways, no code. But, and why is that? It's part of the ethos of WordPress, which is the democratization of publishing, that putting your content, your ideas, your thoughts on the internet should be accessible to anyone. And in those days, it was not. It was kind of like a struggle to get your ideas out there. And WordPress made it possible for anyone with any idea, hobby, anything, that they want to teach something, they want to learn something, people could share their knowledge and ideas, and it was amazing and beautiful. And then, so I mentioned the one-click goodness, which is also part of the no-code part of it. But then this started to happen.
Is your WordPress site a mess again after a plugin update? Clear your schedule. We've got a lot of work to do. Yeah. Ooh, fix. Welcome to Fixing Time with Eugene. I'm Eugene. Here we go. We're gonna fix it. Keyboard dance. Don't you just love your life right now?
So Wix, yeah, go hooray for Wix. So Wix put out a series of ads which were very much like a finger in the eye of WordPress. I think that's a Hebrew saying, so I'm not sure if that translates well to English, but it was basically saying, here's all the problems with WordPress, and everyone's like, oh, you shouldn't say that, but the fact is that there was a lot of truth behind it, and that video describes a lot of my own experience with WordPress, where there's something conflicting, there's something breaking, white screen of death, this screen of death, like it just like very messy and very hard to deal with, and in order to resolve these issues, I had to start being able to deal with code. So WordPress stopped being no code, and you really, you pretty much hit a wall quickly where you needed to bring someone who knew code in, or you need to learn code to deal with your WordPress site. You needed to start to understand hosting solutions and all this kind of stuff. It stopped being one click, yay, here we go, and started to be much more complicated. And also the social networks came around. And everyone was now able to share all of their content really, really easily. They didn't have to know anything. All they needed to know how to do was install an app on their phone, which, like my kid when she was 3 practically could do, and click a few things and you've got your content online. Like all types of content, videos, text, audio, you name it. It was all, you could just put it all online and everyone could share their content really easily. So the benefit of WordPress, which was the democratization of publishing, stopped being such a big advantage when all of these platforms came out and everyone could do it really, really easily. So this is the experience that new users see when they come to WordPress for the first time. What do I do? Where do I look? So there's like the billion things in the sidebar, and I don't really know what any of it means. Oh, but I know that there's upcoming WordPress events. Like, okay, thank you very much. That really has a lot to do with me trying to write something. And then they come to the block editor. And the block editor says this. Now, first of all, what is a block editor? I don't know what's blocky about it. I came from Instagram. Nobody there is talking about blocks. So now I'm like at this thing, and it's telling me how to use my blocks. Okay, I just want to write something. And then there's like a whole tutorial there, and the stuff in the sidebar, like what's a permalink, right? It doesn't align with the user experience that young people and people who grew up in the generation of social media and iPhones and everything are used to. It's too many things happening and too little idea where to get started. People just want to get started, just want to do my thing. So there's an annual survey done about WordPress. The 2022 survey results came out, and they asked, what is the most frustrating thing about WordPress for you? And here are the top 2 things. Gutenberg is not finished yet, but it's like a major part of the WordPress project, and it's being pushed very heavily, but this is people's experience with it. So, okay. And full site editing is too hard to learn. That's basically Gutenberg. So people are frustrated about actually just trying to create content. And this is a solution that's meant to make that easier, but people are finding it frustrating. Here's some stats around it. So 22% of the survey responders have only used WordPress for a year or less. That's a lot of people who have used WordPress for a short amount of time. And that's a lot of people who are experiencing what I showed you and what we all are familiar with for the first time. How many of them do you think are going to stick around? 30% reference difficulties with site editing in Gutenberg. Now, this 50% churn is not from the annual survey. I have a lot of conversations with a lot of people from a lot of different types of platforms and hosting companies, whatever. And a number I keep hearing from people is that hosting companies or churn in general around WordPress sites or WordPress is about 50%. That means 100 people start using WordPress. Shortly, soon after, only 50 are still using WordPress. As a person who founded a tech company and a startup, that type of churn would never, ever stand. You cannot have churn like that. That is a really bad sign of a very poor user experience, and it continues to be accepted. Now, you could say maybe it's the hosting company's issue, except for that if it's consistent, and also a lot of people don't actually know what hosting is, and they don't know what they're using, then something's going on when they open up WordPress and they just eyes glaze over and they're like, what the heck? So what can we do? I'm just saying what I think because I am concerned about the top of the funnel for WordPress from the no-code aspect. We can do real user testing and get fresh perspectives. A lot of us have been looking at WordPress for so long, we don't even see the issues anymore. We're like, oh, of course I go into permalinks and I do that, and then my permalinks work again. No, nobody else knows that. So get a fresh perspective on that. We need smooth and clear onboarding. People should come in and just be able to start creating a post and just do it. Nobody needs to talk about blocks or anything like that. Declutter and simplify. Support page builders. Okay, now obviously you're going to be like, oh, she's from Elementor. Except for that, by the way, before I joined Elementor, I never used page builders. I'm a tech snob, so I was like, no. But I've come to appreciate it as a way for people to get up and running with WordPress pretty easily. And I actually participated on a panel at the Atarim conference, which just happened, with all the page builders. And that was a really cool conversation, which, by the way, is one of the great things about WordPress, that people competing with each other can get together and have a conversation. All of them bring value to our ecosystem, and all of them are important. This is just in terms of how valuable page builders can be. This is some statistics about Elementor itself. So Elementor's growth is huge, and now we have over 13 million active installs and power 8.3% of the web, which is insane, because it solves a pain point. And so do the other page builders, but this growth shows that people need this type of solution. And something I'm going to call no hosting. Nobody should have to think about what's going on behind the scenes of their website. Just like when you use social networks or your CRM or any other online solution, you don't care if it's using Google Cloud or AWS and which of the services it's using and anything like that. You just know that you want it to work. Same with WordPress. We need to reach a point where hosting is not even something that people have to think about, and some kind of platformization of the WordPress ecosystem. However that looks, we have to stop thinking about hosting and SaaSify everything. The fourth benefit of WordPress is that we are open source. So in this survey, they asked, why are you using WordPress? 62% said because it's open source. The pros and cons of being open source, okay, open source is messy. It means, on the one hand, you can do whatever you want, which is amazing. On other platforms, you hit a wall. On WordPress, you don't. You really, if you bring in a developer, whatever you have the skills, you can do anything you want. But it can get messy because you have a lot of power. So you can have all these issues related to conflicts, hosting, whatever. It has full and complete flexibility, which is a benefit. You really own your own space, which is rare on the internet today. With all due respect to social networks, you don't actually fully own your content there. With WordPress and open source, you do. And it has an amazing community around it that's bringing its knowledge together, and that's why WordPress continues to grow and be such a popular platform, because of the crowdsourced kind of innovation around it. So that's with regards to open source. And I just learned something that I was floored by. A few companies that are in the CMS space with their own proprietary solutions are now looking to develop something around WordPress. Because from their perspective, you can only grow so far if you are proprietary. Open source is the key to growth. We in the industry kind of complain, oh, open source, it's hard, you can't monetize it, it's a hard business case, and it's true. But proprietary companies are looking to WordPress to answer their own growth needs. So there's a big opportunity here, and we just have to learn from it. Which brings me to the business of WordPress. So 20 years in, WordPress has matured, not only as a product, not only as a community, but also from an economic perspective and a business perspective. So we have started to see examples of companies raising funding from real, external VCs, not from within the WordPress industry. And most of them are the large hosting companies. And actually, so far, I think there's 2 that have raised significant funding from outside of the WordPress industry, and that's Stratic and Elementor, which is funny because it was not only coincidence from the perspective of that, we kind of know each other, and now we're part of Elementor, but both of our funding rounds were published exactly on the same day on TechCrunch. Neither of us knew that was happening, but suddenly we both were there on February 26th in 2020, announcing our funding rounds. This was a big change for the WordPress industry in terms of how we fund our growth and also how we look at growth. That WordPress has such a potential for growth, we need to aim for fast and large scaling like in regular tech. So this is something that's relatively new to our industry and hopefully we'll see more of. But what are so first of all, what are some signs of maturity that we've seen over the years in WordPress? When I started out, people sold lifetime subscriptions, which is a disaster from a business perspective, and moved to recurring revenue, so that's much more sustainable. You have freemium, you have premium. It used to be more or less just free. Moves that recognize the scale of WordPress, high growth goals, and that open source can be a business. WordPress is not the only open source based software or industry that is functioning as a business, and we definitely can, and we have a lot of opportunity ahead of us. It's about capturing that value. But as a person who raised funding from VCs, I can tell you it's hard to tell the WordPress story to non-WordPress people. They don't quite get it. They're not part of it. You're trying to tell the story as if it's regular software, but it's not. We run around going to WordCamps and sharing our knowledge, okay, that seems weird. We want to contribute, and okay. It's we're a very weird industry. So it's hard to tell the story. So what's exciting now and what's happening in our industry is that successful WordPress entrepreneurs are now coming back to invest in other WordPress entrepreneurs to help the industry grow, like Amelia. So Yoast and Marika invested in Stratic, and they're amazing investors, so FYI. They have always been passionate about the WordPress ecosystem and industry, and while they were in it as founders, and now coming back as investors. And that, in my opinion, it's very similar to regular tech, where people have exits and become angel investors in companies, bring their expertise as founders and understanding of the industry back to other founders and help the industry grow. And as Marika puts it, it is beneficial to the ecosystem if we all thrive. And I totally agree. And it's amazing to see that level of maturity in our ecosystem. I said 5 points, but what is the presentation without AI? Right? If I don't say anything about AI, then what am I? I said nothing. So I don't normally go along with trends, but I am very excited about AI. So I just want to show you something that we've been working on at Elementor because I'm there. And I think that the future of the web is going to be very interesting from an AI perspective. I really see us putting prompts in going, build me a website that targets, teachers, and I want to generate leads, but also make sales, put all the calls to action, and then we'll get that. and develop the content for it, and then we'll tweak in whatever and bring our human input into it, but I really see a place where that starts to happen. So here's kind of like the beginnings of it.
Introducing Elementor AI. Let's try an entire blog post. Cool. Now let's create some custom CSS with Elementor AI. Let's force this SVG icon to be white. And there you have it. With its robust features made specifically for Elementor, Elementor AI gives you superpowers that take your web creation skills to the next level. But why take our word for it? Try Elementor AI for free on any Elementor website.
So that's just the beginning in Elementor, and I think we're going to see a lot more of that among other platforms and in general. It's very exciting. I think we're going to be able to increase our velocity. We have to retain control of quality, but we're all going to be able to do more and better, I think, and this is just the start. So those are some things related to the future of WordPress and our industry, and I hope that that was helpful and you enjoyed, and I'm open to questions. So thank you.